So just an update on the swing box. I wanted to communicate what I had done with the modifications. Last time I talked about swapping, flipping over the latch and cutting off the rod and changing some things up. Some things changed that kind of altered my plans, but it worked out great. So one of the things I said that we're going to do is cut this rod off. So if you remember, the rod protruded out to about right here. Problem with that is it puts all of the load, when you're off camber and off-roading, stuff like that, on this bracket right here. So I've replaced that. If I continue to off-road, this is just going to wear and be a potential breaking point again. And so I'd like, I'd like to keep this box. It's been really great. So I wanted to split the load a lot better between these. And one problem I ran into, though, because you can kind of see altered what I've talked about here a little bit, when the box would close on the latch, this indention here would allow the latch to come through onto the other side of the rod, and sit in there. So when I cut it and then flip the latch here, it would strike the box, because of course there's not an indention here. So that created a problem. What I did was I took, and the end of the rod that was cut off, I welded it onto the rod that remains. So now, just as I talked about, it goes right back in there when you pull it out, but it still will unlatch at this point here. So again, the other part that I did was the latch. Now, to get it moved into position properly, I re-drilled these holes here, and that allowed it to sit where I needed it to, closer to that outer bracket. It would just put it in better position, but it worked out extremely well, lubricated everything up. Now, when this box comes in, and you can barely see it, but it's going to latch right in place. Holds very secure. That's all it took. Just welding that piece on there. Of course, I had to disassemble everything, but didn't take long. Very simple, to pull everything apart, weld that in place. That's the update. I think that the way that it is now, it's going to be very secure. Pushed on the box pretty aggressively, no movement. The load is now shared better between both brackets on the box, and I don't feel like when I'm off-roading and stuff that it's going to put more of a load on that outer bracket and make it as prone to break. I think that it's going to stay in place a lot better, and the box doesn't sit out but maybe 1/4 of an inch more, if that at all, than it did previously. It sits really close to the same position. So I think that might have to do with the fact that this brace, it does sit at an angle, and so where this latch was up here, it probably did sit out 1/8 of an inch or so more than it does now, really close to where it was before. Just to kind of give you another angle of it, so this is actually about where it was before. It did not sit right up on there, even originally. So I know that gap, way up close, looks huge, but it's really not. I don't want it sitting right up against that, and when it latches, slamming into that anyway. And when it moves around, I don't want it, there to be a big probability that bang, 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 bang every time. It still might if I really push hard, and it's still going to hit. But here, just me shaking it and everything, it'll hit lightly. But that's really, I think, how it needs to be and how it needs to sit. So if there's any questions that you have about that, I think it's pretty straightforward. But to me, this is probably closer to where, in my opinion, it needs to be designed anyway. I think that it needs to, that load being shared between those brackets on the box. Just my opinion. So, if swing box sees this, swing case sees this, we need to call it the right word, swing case. But I think of it like a toolbox. But so they see this, hey, use that idea, modify that rod, share that load between there. Maybe nothing else, just redesign the box slightly to where you don't have to add a piece of the rod there. It just has that indention there, or an extra indention right there between those two brackets, and that latch will work fine, and the rod design too. So everybody take care, have fun, be safe out there.